It's Bama Online on YouTube on a Tuesday afternoon. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BOL, alongside our site publisher right there, the one, the only Tim Watson, of course, down there in the bottom square, our senior recruiting editor, Andrew Bone. And guys, we met just yesterday, right? And I guess you sort of gave us the heads up that just because we were entering a dead period, it wasn't going to be dead at all. And the news has been fast and furious. You guys, Joseph Hastings will be joining us shortly here for a quad box edition of the program. It's been fast and coming, surprising maybe on some fronts, Tim, but just kind of a reset of where this class sits right now and kind of what and how this has played out, really going back to mid March.
I'd love to say, hey, I knew this was happening. I'd love to say, and I was very positive about this staff. Everything we heard individually, Courtney Morgan, Coach Cap, we knew Freddie Roach, we knew Robert Gillespie, we knew a lot of these guys. Bob Welton stayed on. We felt they could recruit well. I thought they would recruit well. The Alabama brand stands for something, even if Andrew's coaching them. So maybe not. All right. So, but yeah, I don't know if anybody in the world saw this coming. I mean, we're not even on July 1st. We're not haven't even seen fireworks. Nobody's burned their hand with the sparkler by July 4th. To see this heat wave, and again, the irony of this being called a cold summer because it's 1,000 degrees, and that the pace they're setting is unbelievable on the recruiting trail. So there's a lot of things here. It's just hard to believe. It's just unbelievable in a lot of ways, but very positive all the way around.
Yeah, Andrew, and the excitement certainly right there. You can see it with us at BamaOnline.com. The roundtable just a blaze of late. It stays hot. That block stays hot on the roundtable at BOL. It never goes cold, so to speak. But we're seeing it here in our show chat too as we welcome folks into the program. Keith Griner, Tony Novinsky, Rod here. He's wanting more good news, as you can see. Everyone checking in here in the program, and we're going to try to get to each and every one of you. In fact, at the end of the program, as we near the end, we'll try to get into maybe some questions that you have here in the show chat. So if you want to get those in, feel free to do so as well. But Andrew, just your thoughts as again we think about where we were and kind of understandably so, not totally sure of how this was all going to play out in the first 5 or 6 months of the Kalen DeBoer era. Positive and encouraging signs, optimism, but to get to this point this quick, pretty amazing.
I think so. And I love our subscribers on BOL who always love to go back 3 or 4 months and pull up old threads about the recruiting class and how things are falling apart. And luckily, we were there to tell everybody, hey, it's February. Let these guys get their feet wet. Let them go out on the recruiting trail. Let's see what happens. And we probably didn't expect it to be this good this quickly. I mean, we expected Alabama to still be Alabama and still get guys on campus, but to be able to get all these commitments, especially this month, because we've been around for a while. We've seen a lot of these visitors come in, and most of them wait until July or August before making their decisions. You don't really see a lot of commitments in the month of June, but Alabama so far has been able to get 8 public commitments on board, and it certainly seems like there's more on the way. But you got to be really impressed with the way that this staff has come together. And Tim mentioned it, not only the new guys but the old guys who were on Nick Saban's staff. People forget about them, guys that have been around, and even the girls that work in the recruiting department. They've got an unbelievable team, support staff there that do so much for the university, and they've been doing it for a long time, and they know how things work. And now you get this new blood in, rejuvenate things, and it's been going extremely well.
Tim, let's talk about the weekend that was in the last 72 hours or so and the commitments that we talked about throughout the weekend. Micah DeBose, that was a very interesting one from Saturday night for sure. And then just the vibe and the, again, continued momentum, the positivity. We saw it with Caleb Cunningham, the 5-star wide receiver from Mississippi. We're going to talk about it extending into today when some predictions were made by our BamaOnline.com staff involving another 5-star Mississippian. But just how the weekend is parlayed, once again, this seems like a week to week thing. It doesn't just end on Sunday night. It seems like week after week we have this carryover and this spillover into the following week.
The thing is like almost every official visit's good. And we meet every Sunday. We group together, talk. What are we hearing? What's everybody saying? What's everybody? And dude, it is overwhelming positive with these official visitors. We say that with in mind that knowing, free, pretty girls, grown ups, showing you the town, the college campus, free food, partying on college campus. All that's a good time, anyways. But this is more than that because we see the after effects. That whole he'll come down from the visit high. Well, a lot of it haven't even came down. A lot of them it just leaks over, bleeds over. I mean, Micah DeBose, there's been 2 commitments, and there could possibly be more. The punter and Micah DeBose didn't even leave. They're in the middle of their official visit and committed on a Saturday. Like they were barely at halftime of their visit and committed. So that's just a testament to how this is done, how well it is. And again, I don't think there's anybody you don't give credit to. The football players, everybody gets along. The hosts have been good. Ryan Williams, Bach, all these guys, California kids working, Dijon Lee. There's a vibe there of they all fit in. I think dudes feel like a bunch of dudes. I know that's a cliche. My boy Rusty Manziel loves to use it, but they feel like a bunch of dudes hanging out, drinking a beer at the lake, shooting pools, smoking a cigar. That's kind of the vibe we get from it. Travis, you're mute. I don't know why we weren't talking. We're just doing. You can hear us. We're doing hand signals.
I thought you were telling me to lay down the bunt. I thought
Just-
you were third base coach in there for a second. You guys have got this thing. I'm just along for the ride. No, but let's talk, Andrew, about kind of how, you know, some of Alabama's commitments. We talked about this in the past. They've taken some visits elsewhere, but it's another area where it seems like Alabama's come through things in pretty good shape. And not just this past weekend, but when you talk about the Luke Metzes and the Derek Smiths and Anthony Rogers and Antonio Coleman, Jaden Harmon. That list is pretty extensive, and Duke Johnson, and Alabama seems to have weathered it to this point pretty well.
Tim said it a few times. If your commitments aren't still being pursued by other schools that are trying to flip them, it's probably not a good sign that they are on your commitment list, because you want guys to want your players, because it means they're very good. And I think that Alabama's done a great job, especially early on. I mean, there were some evaluations there, especially with somebody like Luke Metz. Georgia wasn't going after Luke Metz when he first committed to Alabama or was offered by Alabama. He commits to Alabama. All of a sudden, Georgia wants him. They bring him in for an official visit. Glenn Schumann's calling him just about every single day to try to get him to flip. Then he comes back to Tuscaloosa for the official visit this past weekend. Had a lot of great things to say. He said he had one quote in there. Alabama is getting anyone they want right now, and he loves being a part of it. And they're not going to get everybody they want, but they are certainly doing a damn good job right now of getting a lot of great players on board, and certainly trending. I think some of these guys we're going to continue to watch going into the fall. We're in the dead period right now, July, all the way until July the 25th. It's not a dead period. There's still a lot going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of recruiting still happening. There's coaches that are trying to get kids to their final big weekend in July. Alabama's going to have a big recruiting event on July the 28th. They're trying to get a lot of guys on campus for that event, but so are a lot of other schools throughout the country. And then we kind of get into the fall, big games start happening on different campuses, and they're trying to bring in guys for all these big games. So there's a lot of recruiting still left to be done. Alabama, certainly going to have to try to hold on to their commitments, but man, it certainly has been a great summer so far as the commitments that have taken visits elsewhere. But so far, Alabama has kind of come out unscathed with as far as guys potentially flipping to other programs. But we're going to continue to watch. I know Tim's got some stuff that he wants to say probably on some of these guys that have taken visits elsewhere as well.
I was going to say that Andrew said Alabama won't get everybody they want, which is true, but Alabama most definitely will not get everybody the BOL roundtable members want. They will not take 5 wide receivers. They will not take 7 offensive linemen, 9 defensive linemen. That has been an ongoing discussion. And also, we appreciate this crowd. If y'all get a chance, like and subscribe. Travis is recovering from doing yard work. He's pumping down the Gatorade, so I'm taking over the advertisement. But give us a click, give us a like, give us a subscribe. It's been a lot more fun. They had to make me do these shows, and I really have a good time with them now, only because I'm the best looking. I would never.
Screwed around and just created a monster here with Tim Watts on the
But thank
YouTube.
you all for liking, subscribing, and showing up.
I
We
don't
have a
even
good
know what
time
Tim
with it.
looked like until like 8 months ago.
I was hiding. They drug me out. I've always been behind. I was the wizard behind the curtain, and now you see why.
It's like Edward Scissorhands. Once he found out he was talented or something. Yeah. Our guy Tim Watts. Hey, Tim, wanted to ask you too, and also you, Andrew, just from a staff perspective, collective effort gets used a lot, but it really does feel like that's the case right now. With Kalen DeBoer, obviously at the top spot, but Courtney Morgan in that GM role, Chris Kapilovic has certainly been important. Mo Linguist, Cade Womack. You can kind of go down the list, right? Freddie Roach, just about anywhere you turn, there's been significant contributions, Tim.
Yeah, it is a team effort. I know that sounds a little bit hokey. And if you think about it, if you followed Alabama the last year, it was easy to it was still a team effort, but it was one man's team. You know what I mean? It was Nick Saban. He was the biggest hammer in college football. How many times do we hear in March, there's no chance? I haven't heard from him. And then in May, we're writing the commitment story. Saban just had a way. And of course, he was, bigger than life to a lot of people, taking photos, everything he did, very popular guy. This staff obviously starts with Kalen DeBoer. And I think it starts with the fact people love Kalen DeBoer. And then it just trickles down. And everybody brought something different. You have Robert Gillespie, who's very familiar with the South. Freddie Roach, Christian Robinson, who I almost forgot his name. Christian Robinson is very familiar with the South. So you have that Southern, but you also have guys from the North like Colin Lindquist. Mo Lindquist, Colin Hitchler coming from the North. You had Courtney Morgan coming from the left coast. You had all these guys bringing it in and, kind of just making it a big melting pot of people from all, prospects from all over the country. So obviously it's working at this stage.
What about it, Andrew? Sort of your perspective on how this has all come together, and seems like this staff's been together longer than say 6 months or so.
Yeah, I mean, they've certainly formed a pretty tight bond. I think it starts, from coach DeBoer, talking to different people around the program. He's just like one of the regular coaches. I mean, he's hanging out with the guys, spending time with the coaching staff, spending time with players, their families, recruits when they step on campus. He's the last one to leave. I mean, he's trying to develop as many close connections with these families as he possibly can, and I think that's paid off in a big way. But you go back to that. What was that? January 11th or 12th, when they flew in from Washington, and Coach DeBoer, opens up the plane. He's coming out, and then you see Courtney Morgan. You're like, oh shit, it's about to be real. This guy knows exactly what he's going to be doing, and he's going to be a big part of this program. And of course, you're like, all right, let's see what they're able to do. And over the course of these last 5 months, we've seen what this staff has been able to do. There's a new energy in the program. Not to say that Coach Saban and that old staff didn't have a lot of energy. They had a lot of energy, but this is rejuvenated. And I think there's a lot of positive momentum heading into August. And you got to, heading into July. Remember a few weeks ago, we were talking about, is Alabama going to be able to get 20 commitments by August 15th? There was a few of us on here, I'm not going to name any names, that said no chance.
I was in Spain. I was not on this show. We're not slandering.
I'm not going to say, but
we're going to have to, with the way Bones patting himself on the head, we're going to have to put him in concussion protocol, I think, as soon as the show's over. But he's absolutely right. He said it. He said it. He said it. Andrew Bones said it. There's no doubt about it.
Of course, when we got off the show that day, I was thinking, I hope that doesn't come back.
That's happened.
And how about Bone? Tim? How about Bone? He's so excited. He's working blue on the show today.
Somebody said I'm not smiling enough. I mean,
wow.
Dang,
how about that? Bone's fired up today. I love it. We love the juice.
He's got that chewy salsa in him. That Mexican got him going. The Mexican food.
Yeah. It'll do that. That creamy jalapeno at Chewy's. Ooh,
you got to be excited. I think
absolutely.
Probably just impressed with what this staff's been able to do overall in such a short time period. And we'll know a little bit more in the next couple weeks. So
we always wondered what it would be like, and now we know, and we're kind of surprised, and we're kind of thrilled, and you're kind of excited, and there's a lot happening this week. There's just a lot. That hasn't stopped.
No.
And again, some of the staff's only been here 4 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them got here late. They trickled in. Some of them couldn't work because of their Washington contract, but it's been a very interesting run. If we ever get a break, we might list some kind of chronological list of everything that happened, but there's been no rest up to this point.
I mean, a lot of these staff members, as you said, they've only been on campus for 4 months, but a lot of them didn't even meet a lot of these guys until the spring. Some even not until May, and some not until June. And they've done this good of a job so far.
Hey, let's talk about that offensive line and Coach Cap, guys, because it appears as if the Crimson Tide is still looking for one more OL to complete that area of the 2025 class. And Ty Haywood, he's the guy that comes to mind instantly. Let's talk about it, Tim. Where are you at with Ty Haywood still with Alabama? A lot of momentum here in the last week. You still sensing that? And then, Andrew, I want your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I feel the offensive line, I mean, they've kind of put it together. You've got a center, you got 2 guards, you got a tackle, basically. You got some position flexibility with some of those guys, but I think Haywood is like the perfect guy you add. He's probably a left-right tackle. You got Jackson Lloyd, probably a left-right tackle, so that works out well for the guys on the interior. Some of them could kick out. Still feel like Bama's did a great job there. FSU gave him some stuff, gave him a lot to think about. I think he listed the top 3, included those 2 in Oklahoma. It does not sound like Oklahoma's a factor at this stage. I mean, you know how this goes. By an hour from now, he'll be committed there. No, he won't. I'm just kidding. He better not be. But I mean, you know how it changes. But he didn't take his official visit. He could have flipped it and not visited FSU and went there instead. So I'm curious to see his timetable, because we have a feel. We got guys that have a time set. Hey, I'm committing at this time on this day. And we have other guys we feel are close. And the way this Bama class is filling up, I think, some want to get their spot as soon as they can, and we could see that. So Haywood's kind of in that last category, no date set, but I think Alabama's done a really good job there. Again, Coach Cap, Coach Morgan, I mean, they're the dynamic duo. They are really, I don't want to say Batman and Robin. Everybody gets mad if they're Robin, but they're Batman and Batman's twin brother.
Captain Morgan.
There you go. I like that. Captain Morgan.
Where the hell did that come from? You just screamed Captain Morgan. Was not expected.
Print the shirts.
Wasn't expected that.
The Great Wall of Captain Morgan. Yeah, they are. They've done a tremendous job. I mean, they've gotten the guys that they wanted. They, really focused in on a select group, and we saw that. We talked about that last year. That Alabama really didn't offer a lot of offensive linemen. They didn't bring in a lot of the offensive linemen. They just focused on a select group. And they were able to, secure the guys that they really wanted. And that's kind of what Coach Cap, Courtney Morgan have been able to do in this year's cycle. Jackson Lloyd was the first offer for Alabama overall with this new staff. Was offered back on, I believe it's January the 17th or something like that. It was only a few days after Coach DeBoer had arrived. And then you look at a guy like Ty Haywood, who's been a big target for Alabama. Didn't make his first trip to Tuscaloosa until May the 31st, but Coach Cap had actually gone and seen him when he was an assistant coach at Baylor in January. So that relationship started back then, and that's kind of carried over through through right now. But it's been a tremendous offensive line class that they've been able to assemble, guys that they really want. Obviously, there are some other guys who visited this month, but I think that Alabama. They've been hitting really on all cylinders at the offensive line position.
A couple of reminders at this point of the program. First, want to remind you, if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's as simple as hitting that subscribe button right there. Turn on those notifications. You'll get all of our YouTube content as it drops right here on the YouTube home for BamaOnLine.com. Also, if you give us a like, we would certainly appreciate that as well. And of course, you want to be with us right there at BOL at BamaOnLine.com, the roundtable. That's where you want to hang out with us. So much great information, minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, week to week, right here Tim Watts, Andrew Bone, Joseph Hastings, Charlie Potter, Jimmy Stein, myself. We're going to be there for you at BamaOnLine.com. And of course, we got Joseph Hastings coming up in just a minute. And when we bring Mr. Joseph Hastings on, I want to get his thoughts on this too, because it's the news of the day, or it feels like it, the news of the morning. It moves so fast. I guess I'll just designate it as biggest news of the morning. AK Deer, the 5-star running back. Now we're seeing predictions of AK Deer signing with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Tim, saw Steve Wiltfong, a Fong bomb on that as well today. You guys have been all over it. Where does that sort of come from? No, he had a great visit here recently to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, we went after it. Joseph, Andrew, and I really grinded Sunday. Got double dose nuggets out. Got all these interviews. We said let's go to lunch Tuesday. It'll slow down. We had Monday popping, which we didn't expect. Wake up Tuesday, and then AK Deer. We got a great source saying that AK Deer. This is on the heels of Ole Miss losing 3 commitments last night in 2 hours. They had 3 4-star kids decommit. We saw a little bit on social. AK started clearing a little bit of his Ole Miss stuff out, but we felt that Bama did a great job. Joseph had a good interview. Andrews had good interviews talking about AK loving his visit. The people around him loved his visit. And this isn't the guy, you don't want to stress this, is that Kalen DeBoer and them might be new to AK Deer, but Robert Gillespie's not. That relationship's went on for years. And Gillespie's kind of that sneaky assassin type guy. We don't talk about him much, but boy, he hits hard at that running back position. I don't think there was a harder recruiting battle to manage last year than Daniel Hill in many ways. I don't think Ryan Williams even scratched the surface of Daniel, but he landed him who's close to AK Deer. So we feel pretty confident right now. Bama's in a good spot.
What about it, Andrew? Give us something on AK Deer.
Yeah, like Tim mentioned, this is a guy who's been recruited by Alabama for more than a year. Robert Gillespie's done a tremendous job there, and this has always been kind of Alabama's. I don't want to say he's their number one guy at running back, but he's right there near the top and has been there for a very long time. And the guy that they've heavily recruited has had a committable offer since before Coach DeBoer arrived in Tuscaloosa. And this is a guy that Robert Gillespie has certainly developed a very close relationship with. I think we're always kind of skeptical sometimes when you start hearing things, coming out of the state of Mississippi, because it's always been a very difficult place to recruit. For the last, as long as Tim and I have been covering
ever.
The
last ever.
Yeah, I'm almost 21 years in this. Tim's longer, and we've never seen it be very easy in the state of Mississippi. So Alabama's got a chance to really really make some noise in the Magnolia State this year, and AK Deer is certainly trending to Alabama. We made those picks on BOL this morning, and we'll see what happens.
Yep, and if you were with us right there at BOL, you got that first right there on the round table with us at BamaOnLine.com. And now another big piece to the coverage puzzle. Right there at BOL joins us in Joseph Hastings as we go quad box on a Tuesday afternoon. Mr. Hastings, how are you?
Doing well. Had to bring out the Avengers poster because it seems like the Alabama recruiting staff right now is going on an Avengers level run. It's been incredible to watch.
It's been something else, especially with, again, AK Deer earlier today being predicted now by our staff to the Alabama Crimson Tide. There's a big decision coming up later this week, too, in Josiah Sharma, the big defensive lineman from the West Coast. He will announce his commitment on Friday. Joseph, I know you spoke with Josiah's mother. That's a great update. I checked that out earlier today there at BamaOnLine.com. Just give us one or two of the key takeaways from that conversation as you move through it and think about where this decision could be headed with Josiah Sharma.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that stood out to me is kind of that best of both worlds situation, that theme that we heard earlier this year, when getting the initial reactions from recruits to Kalen DeBoer's hiring. She talked about that longstanding relationship with Kalen DeBoer and, how Washington was their first offer, was Josiah's first offer back in May 2023. He obviously committed there, earlier this year on January 1st. So there's a longstanding relationship with Kalen DeBoer. And then you put that together with Alabama's history and tradition. And she said, quote unquote, it amazes Josiah the level of Heisman trophies, championships that Alabama has won. So that was one key takeaway. And then the other two is just where he's kind of at in his recruiting process. She said that even though the commitment date has been set, they've narrowed it down to a couple of colleges. Nothing was disclosed in that conversation as to which colleges those were, but obviously Alabama, is a school that's a factor in his recruitment. He visited 3 straight months, February, March, April. They pretty much knew everything they needed to know about Alabama heading into this visit. It was more so about interacting with the players, seeing the coaches again, before the decision was made, and also for her being able to talk with parents of the players. So, really great conversation. I highly recommend you all check that out on BamaOnLine.com. But, we'll see. We'll see. As of speaking for her last night, she maintains the decision hasn't been made. So, still digging on that recruitment.
Andrew, tell us what you can gather, and certainly your background with Sharma and his recruitment and how this seems to be narrowing down to just a school or two.
Yeah, I mean, if people remember, this is a kid that was committed to Washington last year. So the relationship goes back a long time with Coach DeBoer, Courtney Morgan, and the coaching staff. He made a quick trip to Tuscaloosa after receiving an offer. I think it was on that February 3rd, junior day. Made 2 trips back during the spring and then came back for the official visit. Obviously, back in the spring, there weren't a lot of schools after him, and it really kind of turned up, especially from Texas, Oregon, even Washington was back on him. And he's really kind of focused in on Alabama, Texas, and in my opinion, Oregon still hanging around as well. But it's certainly become a tighter race than probably what we expected. He's a West Coast kid, but that relationship with Coach DeBoer and that staff certainly goes a long way. So we'll kind of see what happens on Friday, but that decision's coming up, and Alabama's certainly looking to add some more defensive line help, and they've got some big targets. They had some big targets on campus this past weekend, and I think they had 4 or 5 total defensive linemen in Tuscaloosa, and they're still looking for at least 2 more, I believe.
Yeah, Tim, I was going to ask you about that big picture with the defensive line. The remaining targets that are out there, who exactly is still available? Who do you kind of envision perhaps being a part of this class maybe, or is that still an evaluation that's ongoing?
I mean, I think they'll be looking guys during their senior year. And let's be honest, defensive line is something we've seen pop up. A guy has lost weight, got stronger, grown 2 inches during the summer. I mean, we see 5'11" guys go to 6'3" and end up in the SEC. So that is a position you'll evaluate heavily as a senior. Everybody will. I don't think we talk enough about London Simmons. Again, a guy that dropped 40 pounds. We haven't seen him 40 pounds less. I saw him when he's 40 pounds heavier on his film. He looked good. He looked explosive. He used his hands. He got down the line surprisingly well for a kid that's 340-plus pounds. But Alabama got him on campus, had him work out, got him committed, was really, really excited to get him committed. So he's a guy we know they're happy about. You can mention Justice Terry. He took an official visit. Georgia's really going to be tough to beat there. I think he had a good visit, but that's going to be a hard pull from Georgia. I think Josh, obviously Sharma and Damian Shanklin's one we're kind of curious about. He's taking a visit along with Floyd Buchard. I mean, Floyd, it's not surprising the same people that help with Floyd, who's originally from Canada, help with Steve, our famous Alabama signee, where I never once said his last name. But I think right now, they're at the stage, offensive line, defensive line, especially with Nick Saban. I think Nick Saban was always, you never turn down a big if you can get him. And I think Alabama's kind of adopting that. So we went from a 2 to 3 class to probably a 3 to 4 class, and then considering what else is out there.
A position we've talked about with you a pretty good bit, Joseph, is tight end. And, we know that our staff at BOL, you, Andrew, Tim, everyone is still continuing to monitor that situation closely, but it's interesting because Alabama at this point does not have a tight end commitment for the 2025 cycle. Who are still some of those names that you're continuing to watch here as we've seen a number of these guys OV to Alabama?
Yeah, speaking of those official visits, Andrew Olesh went in that first weekend, that May 31st to June 2nd weekend, spoke highly of Alabama, said it exceeded his expectations. Obviously, there's some momentum going in for Michigan following his official visit there. And then Nick Townsend, too. He's another one who took an official visit to Alabama earlier this month. And there's some momentum with another school that he recently officially visited, and that being Texas. Caleb Edwards is one to monitor as well. He was one of those midweek official visitors, if you would call that early week official visitors from last week, alongside Kalik Lockett. It seems like he had a pretty good trip there to Alabama. Seems to like the program. Visited in the spring as well for A-Day. So, those are a few names to pay attention to. But who knows? We'll see if some other prospects pop up on the radar, or maybe in-season evaluations. You never can rule out anything like that as it pertains to filling out the numbers at a particular position. But yeah, we're going to be paying attention to some of those guys there that Alabama's brought in for official visits, and see if they can get anyone on campus at that end of July after the dead period timeframe.
Andrew, we can circle back to this because we mentioned Caleb Cunningham earlier in the program, but with these wide receivers that Alabama, these elite wide receivers that Alabama continues to work very heavily and appears to be in pretty good shape with at least a couple of them. But when you think about Kalik Lockett, Caleb Cunningham, Meadows, what are you thinking in terms of maybe a timeline where decisions for those guys are concerned?
Yeah, well, I think something's going to happen relatively soon. I don't think that we're going to have to wait too long with Caleb Cunningham. This kid that was originally going to wait until December, but I think there's probably a little bit of pressure to go ahead and make a decision, just because you look at Alabama's class. They have one wide receiver right now, Latzir Brooks, who we've talked about a lot, is probably one of the most underrated wide receivers in the country. He's top 100 on three, and it may still be too low. But Alabama's only looking to sign 2 to 3 total wide receivers in this year's class, and they had some big ones on campus over the course of the last week. Kalik Lockett, who we weren't even talking about 2 weeks ago, comes in for an official visit, and all of a sudden Alabama's in that top 2, top 3 discussion with him. Of course, he took an official visit to Texas this past weekend. I think there's still a little bit of back and forth. I know that there's been some predictions in favor of Texas, but I think there's still a lot of communications happening between Lockett and Alabama. So anything's very possible there. And then Derek Meadows and Caleb Cunningham come in for their official this past week. And Cunningham has been predicted to Alabama by a couple of guys, Steve Wiltfong and Chad Simmons of On3 Sports. And we believe Alabama's in a pretty good spot as well with Caleb Cunningham after his weekend visit. He's come out and said that Alabama is his leader, but also still one that we are continuing to monitor closely, because he has mentioned a couple schools at the top of his list over the course of the last month. So, as Tim mentioned earlier, kind of let the visit high die down, but visit high hasn't died down for a lot of these kids after their official visit, even 2 or 3 weeks later. So they're doing something to really impress these guys during these official visits, and they've won a lot of recruiting battles. And like I said, Derek Meadows still also very very active there, and I think that he has moved his commitment date up. Originally supposed to commit on September the 1st. Now going to do it sometime in July. Those are kind of the 3 receivers that we're watching very closely right now. I don't think Alabama would turn down 2 of them if they wanted to commit, but they at least just want to get one right now, and that's kind of at least the focus. Get one on board, see what happens with one of the others.
Tim, in regards to that level of prospect continuing to commit to Alabama and thinking about a potential path to the number 1 class, first full class of Kalen DeBoer, when you talk about this 2025 cycle, is that path still, you think, viable, doable for Alabama when you consider the Georgias and the Ohio States and the other teams that are out there recruiting at a very high level?
Yeah, I might forget somebody, but I think it starts with Ohio State, LSU, Georgia, Alabama, Texas. That's what I think. Now, there's other ones that I certainly won't sleep on. I'm not going to sleep on Tennessee. I'm not going to sleep on Texas A&M. There's some other schools, Miami possibly, but those are the 5 I think you're looking. We did not plan the black shirt. That disturbed me, because it looks like this isn't middle school where we text each other.
We're not shipping Dawson Merritt to Nebraska and the black shirt defense.
No, this
isn't any of that.
We don't want black uniforms. Nobody get mad at us. This is not a statement. What was I even talking about? I'm
You're
at that
talking
state.
about the path to a number one class and kind of
So
the
you're
programs that are also
yeah, so you're
always going to be in that mix.
so you're battling those 5. Here's what I know for sure. It's not off the table. And I think if you told anybody that in January, they'd have laughed. February, they'd have laughed. March, they'd have laughed. April, they're not really laughing as much in May and June, right? Husky Harzen, that was hilarious in February. How are we feeling about it now, right? How are we feeling about that? Feel a little stupid if we were throwing that around, I bet. So it's on the table. I mean, Ohio State's going to have a great class. Georgia's going to have a great class. LSU's going to have a great class. I feel the same for Texas, and they're going to knock free some. But Alabama's in the mix with those, and that's where you want to be if you're fighting. And you look at who they're beating for these guys. Again, Micah DeBose. Who did he choose Alabama over? Ohio State, who definitely was a take. Number 1 recruiting class. LSU, the number 2 recruiting class. They've been doing great. And he was committed at one point to the number 4 recruiting class and ended up in the number 3 recruiting class. So they're not just taking guys from anywhere in a lot of these cases. And you look at the visitors, where they visited. Jaden Harmon, he's visiting Ohio State. Abdul Sanders is visiting Tennessee. Luke Metz is visiting Georgia. I mean, they're battling for the right guys. I mean, if they were visiting, UAB and Georgia State, you'd be having a bit different discussion. But they're battling the big boys, and they're going to lose some, and they're going to win some, which they've done a couple of times head-to-head with Ohio State, for instance, for Micah DeBose and Jackson Lloyd.
How about some clarity right here, Bone, on the wide receiver topic? Default name asks, so you guys are saying if Derek Meadows commits next week and then both Lockett and Cunningham wanted to commit afterwards, they would turn top 15 prospect down?
This is legitimate. A round table subscriber hiding his username. They've asked this. They are genius. They've asked this form of a question. I think that one's just backwards from the first one. 45 different ways. No, we're not at all saying they'll turn down a top 15 prospect. We've never said they would turn down a top 15 prospect. That's never even been discussed. We're definitely not saying they would turn down Lockett or Caleb Cunningham, both who they have very high on the board.
It's just not likely going to happen. I mean, there's just a lot of factors that are involved when you are recruiting the highest of the high-end wide receivers in the country. You're not going to get all of them. You want to get all of them, but you just can't.
Hold your tongue, Andrew Bone.
I mean, Alabama is certainly doing a great job as far as, getting kids, in the top 2, top 3. But we just don't expect Alabama to go in and sign, or add, 3 more top 100 or 2 5-star wide receivers. They might can get 2 out of that group, but we just don't expect 3. Alabama doesn't expect 3. I think they
don't want 3. Yeah, they had. Don't forget last year's class. I think people are just skipping. Caleb Odom was a 5-star. He's a wide receiver. Ryan Williams, I keep hearing that kid's pretty good. You got Bubba Hampton, who jumped in the boat late. That was a pretty good group last year. So you don't really need to take 4 more. You want to get guys you can get on the field and play. And this goes back to what we said earlier in the show. The fans are like, just take them all, let it sort out. Well, the problem is if you want the top 2 on your board and you take a third, you could lose one of the top 2. A lot of these coaches are saying we're taking X number and all that kind of stuff. But we do not expect Alabama to turn down 5-star talents.
Yeah, Jamie M says T. Watts is serious when he's got them glasses on.
No, I'm just blind.
Yeah, I think the cargos are more of like Tim's suspenders for James Spann. I think cargos. That's kind of his trademark.
There was nothing
when he's got those cargos on, it's real.
When Tim saw Coach DeBoer wearing cargo shorts in the spring, nothing made him happier.
Well, what happened was Coach DeBoer saw me wearing them and started to wear them, and that's when I was like, "My dude."
That must be what they do in Alabama. Let me go buy a few pairs.
Coach DeBoer said, "Tim Watts, how do I get in contention for the number 1 class?" And I said, "Let me tell you what I did."
Where do you even buy cargo shorts these days?
Dude, anywhere. They just fall from the heavens.
I think Tim's
got his
own line now at like Belk's or something.
It's funny you think I shop though. I appreciate you thinking I actually shop. You'd have to ask the wife.
Well, if you did, you wouldn't wear cargos.
I would.
What about it, Joseph? Let's talk about something that we're gonna get into some more questions here in a minute too. But what are you watching closely here as we move through this stretch? It's got to be hard. It's kind of like Times Square when you come out of the subway tunnel, and there's 1,000 lights hitting you, and you're trying to centralize on one thing, but sensory overload is just killing you. Are you even able to do that right now, Joseph?
Yeah, it's an incredible time. I just want to say on that last question, I think we're one step away from what if the Corian Moore, Kalik Lockett, and Caleb Cunningham all want in on this class. I mean,
don't get them started.
We'll see that one popping up a lot. But yeah, no, it's I think the thing that I'm kind of interested in seeing, maybe this is, Tim and I and text back and forth this and Bone too. It's just like how the rankings kind of fluctuate because, 1 minute, one school's at this spot and, everything's great. And then another school gets a big time commitment and then that school rises above them. So I'm really interested in seeing how like everything kind of plays out rankings wise with Alabama and where they're kind of at in that, middle of July time period, especially after the next On3 rankings update and, just kind of, being able to gauge where they're at from that perspective. Because, obviously Alabama does their own evaluations. This was true in the Nick Saban era, but, that's something that a lot of fans pay attention to, obviously, and it's a good way to gauge where the class is at. So, Bama checks in at 4th now. I believe at one point they were number 3, with a chance, a possibility of getting up to number 2, and it's pretty close there between those like 2 through 5. And Tim had talked about the race for the number 1 class. Ohio State has a substantial lead right now, but with some of the guys that Bama is trending for, and how the rankings could play out, it's definitely in place. So yeah, that's something I'm kind of watching over these next few weeks.
Tim and Andrew, we got a question here from BTR90. And again, we appreciate the feedback and the input and the questions from our viewers here in the show chat. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel as of yet, we certainly hope you'll do that. Hit the subscribe button for us. Give us a like if you don't mind. Turn on those notifications. That would help us tremendously. All right, Tim, Andrew, where do you predict, the question comes from BTR90, Keelan Russell to be ranked when the new rankings come out July the 8th?
I'm not scared of this one because I felt after watching him and doing intel before he had an Alabama offer, I thought he was a 5-star consideration. I said that several times. I think he should be in consideration for 5-star, whether he stayed committed to SMU or wherever he went. I felt that way. It's only grown stronger. Nick Sheridan goes to season lives, offer him, other schools that offer him his elite level performance. I've talked to people about some of the off the field testing that happens at the Elite 11, comprehension, leadership, and all that. He tested all through the roof. So everything you're looking for skill wise. Also, he was like a little under 6'3". Bama's got him now at almost 6'4". He's growing. He's long armed. He's going to fill out. So I think he's a 5-star. I think he's a composite 5-star. I think everybody had him in the top 2 at the Elite 11. What's he, like 57th or something in the composite? I think he's a composite 5-star, and I think he should be.
What about it, Andrew?
I agree. I think there's no doubt about it. And it's not just because he won the Elite 11. It's everything. And that's where the Elite 11, they looked at, the whole package, his highlights, his junior film, him sitting down in the film room. They're not just out there on the field throwing passes. They're spending a lot of time in the film room going over plays and dissecting everything and learning everything there is to possibly know and, giving back information. How quickly can they retain this information? So these guys know exactly what they're doing. But I think Keelan Russell, I do think the composite is something that we're probably going to watch a little bit closer as far as 5-star status. Now, as for On3, as we've kind of seen, the 5-stars don't really get expanded until that last rankings update to, I think it's 32 5-stars. So they might only have 20 5-stars, but Keelan Russell could still easily be in that top 30 overall group, just maybe not a 5-star just yet at On3. But in the On3 consensus, which takes into account other sites, I think there's no doubt he's going to end up being a 5-star because you see you see all the positive press and feedback he's getting from elsewhere as well.
There you go. Some AK Deer discussion, some Ty Haywood discussion, some tight end discussion, a whole bunch of stuff covered for you on the YouTube home for BamaOnLine.com. But we're just scratching the surface right here. If you haven't already, jump on board with us at BamaOnLine.com. We have the official visit special, $1 for 1 month. Come on, you can do that. You can swing it. Come hang out with us.
We've also got one coming out where it's $75 for the year, which is a good $50, $45 off for a yearly subscription. But I think if you give us a trial for 1 month, I think you'll enjoy it. We have fun on the round table. We have as much fun on the round table as we do on the show, except you'll like it more because you can't see our faces. So
And
we do have,
and
we
you can
do
talk to 16, 17 hours a day.
yeah, we
well,
have
literally, we have got. I'll go to bed. I'm a late night guy. I go to bed at 1:30, wake up 7:30 or so, and I'll have 38 notifications and 11 comments that happen between 1:30 and 6:30. So we appreciate them all, of course.
we definitely have message board mugs. But we have a lot of fun, as these guys just told you. Hey, as always, guys, anything else before we get out of here? But it's been a good Tuesday afternoon show, a nice reset, and you never know when you might hear from us again.
Yeah, I mean, my closing thoughts are, I mean, you got to hang close. I mean, it sounds like I know people tell you that even when you don't need to hang close, but you probably do need to hang close. I mean, it's happening pretty quick at a pace we're not accepting. We can tell you today, Joe's going to the gym, we're going to a business lunch, and all hell's breaking loose. Travis is out cutting the grass, and it's like wide open city. You know what I mean? I mean, this, and again, tip of the hat to this staff, because I mean, everything this went down from January when he was hired on that Friday to here, I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they did it. There's just so much to manage, but the energy, the vibe has been really good. The effort's been really good. And I think the fan base, which was kind of like, you had a lot of Saban fans, right? You had a lot, hey, I kind of like Alabama now. I think Kalen DeBoer, they're like, hey, I kind of like this Kalen DeBoer guy. I think maybe he's my guy. I'm going to ride him out. So, and that's not even talking about our boy, Mr. Oates, Coach Oates, doing
We got a 5-star on
things.
campus right now, Jasper Johnson. Yeah.
Drop that knowledge, JoJo.
Tell them, JoJo.
Drop that on our head. Let's close out the segment with that boom, boom.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be an interesting week on the Alabama recruiting front, because there's a lot of decisions that we're watching pretty closely. Guys have finished up their official visits, so what we've heard is a lot of these guys are taking a few days, maybe taking a week, sit back, try to make the best decision. But we got some big commitments coming up later on. Dejon Lee, 5-star cornerback out of California, announcing on Friday. You have Josiah Sharma. Obviously, we're watching several other guys, including Dawson Merritt, top 100 Wolf, who could be getting very close to making a decision. So we're watching him very closely, and a lot of other guys. And we're going to have
Justin Hill.
Justin
Hill's coming up
July the 3rd. So we're going to be monitoring that. And I know we've seen some comments. Oh, Ohio State. It's still an Alabama-Ohio State recruiting battle right there. So we're going to have a lot more coverage on BOL. So come check us out over there. But thank you all for watching this show. This channel would not be what it is without you guys. So everyone who's watching today and watching the replay, thank y'all so much.
Yeah, just moved past 9,000 subscribers, and thanks to folks like Tara there for the kind words, and everyone else. Big crowd for a live Tuesday afternoon show, and we certainly appreciate each and every one of you making time for us. So for Tim Watts and Joseph Hastings, Andrew Bone, I'm Travis Reier. Thanks for joining us right here on the YouTube home for BamaOnLine.com. And until next time, so long, everybody.